Hi, folks. Welcome to another episode of Chop It Up with the Chairman. I'm Chairman Oz Nesbitt, and this afternoon we are delighted to have Rockdale County's Chief Law Enforcement Officer, the Sheriff of Rockdale County, Sheriff Eric J. Levett. Sheriff, how you doing this afternoon?
Oh, I'm doing good. Thank you for having me here.
Yes, sir. It's so good to have you. There's so much to talk about having the Sheriff of Rockdale County. You and your office have been extremely busy over this pandemic, dealing with so many different issues, not just dealing with crime, but just keeping the community safe overall. I've got so many things I want to talk about because you are a walking institution. But I want to start right there. I want you to give us a little bit about your background, including the Levett legacy, your grandfather being a law enforcement person. Give us for those people who are watching who may or may not know who you are, give us a little bit about your grandfather's role in law enforcement, your years of service, and tell us about how you ended up where you are now as Rockdale County's top cop.
All right. So ironically, a lot of people would think that I kind of followed my grandfather's footsteps by watching him over the years as to why I got in law enforcement. But that's not really the reason why I got in law enforcement. But of course, it inspired me a little bit because he was a law enforcement figure. But what really got me involved in law enforcement is just simply watching the TV shows like Chips and TJ Hooker and, all the other Hunter and whole 9 yards, all the police shows on TV. And then not to mention my grandfather being law enforcement, that inspired me even more. So I chose that career, and I've been in that career now for about 28 years.
I think you also were a police explorer.
So I started out as a junior explorer.
Yes, sir.
And till aging out, then I got on as a part-time dispatcher with Rockdale County. Then I went full-time as a dispatcher in '92, and then I transferred over into the sheriff's office. I started in the jail in 1993.
Okay.
And went to police academy in 1994. And that's where I became a certified police officer. So I worked many different divisions within the sheriff's office and gained knowledge and experience within the sheriff's office. I did leave the sheriff's office. I had a break-in service where I tried to be a police officer, but the sheriff's office drugged me right on back because that's where my heart was.
So you didn't leave law enforcement, but you went from a sheriff's office to a police department.
The police department.
And a lot of people don't know there is a big difference between the two.
It is a big difference, and ironic that you said that you say that because I just did not feel right as a police officer, and that's why I came back to the sheriff's office, and I feel home when I'm with the sheriff's office. So over the years, as you know, I've had a few chief deputies and have hired police officers in top commanding positions and just hired police officers as just deputy sheriffs or they wanted to just go work in the jail or go straight to the courthouse. And so I have this running joke that when you're a police officer, you're just over there just playing police. But when you work for a sheriff's office, you become the real police. Because a lot of people don't understand that sheriff's office has a huge responsibility. But anyway, I can go on and on about that. But my grandfather started an entrepreneur business as a funeral home director some 60-something years ago now.
Wow.
The business has been running over 65 years now. He started off as an entrepreneur, as a funeral director. During that time, he had an ambulance service where he transported people to and from the hospital.
Okay.
He also owned a restaurant at one time. He owned a gas station at one time. He's done a lot of different...
A true entrepreneur.
True entrepreneur. Done a lot of different things. He ran for coroner once and almost won. And he's done a lot of different things. And so, we had a kind of unique raising by being inspired by the men of our family, as well as the women of our family.
Had a lot of positive examples too.
A lot of positive examples, and then his experience and knowledge has inspired the sons, the siblings, to also follow his footsteps. Where I have an uncle now that used to babysit me from time to time, and also we used to work side by side. Now, for some reason, I'm his boss. And so he followed his own father's footsteps. He came up in the funeral business and went over into law enforcement. Now my other uncles, uncle is following my grandfather's footsteps, doing the funeral directing business, and now he kind of has his own entrepreneur business, and it goes on and on and on throughout, trickle effect throughout the family.
The Levett legacy continues throughout Rockdale County. You being the chief law enforcement officer of Rockdale County, talk about, for a lot of folks who don't understand what it means to be a full service sheriff's office. Tell us the difference of being a full service. Every county is not privy of having a full service sheriff's office. You operate a full-fledged operation, Sheriff Levett. Tell us about it.
So, you know, and as you talk about that or mention that, I usually get a little sideways when people say sheriff's office or sheriff's department, because I have to tell them we're a sheriff's office because it's the office of the people. The sheriff's office don't belong to me. You just elected me to run the day-to-day operation. It belongs to the people. And a department is like a separate unit, a separate department. And so I try to remind individuals when they say sheriff's department, well, it's not a department, it's a sheriff's office. So, and we're a full service sheriff's office, Newton County, Walton County, we are all full service sheriff's office where we respond to calls for service like police departments. And then you have DeKalb, you have Henry, you have Cobb and Gwinnett. Those agencies are at Fulton County. Those agencies are not full service sheriff's office, which means they're not responsible and responding to calls for service. We do the calls for service. We have a SWAT. We have investigations, as well as controlling the security of the courthouse and maintaining the jail, security of the jail, and guarding the inmates.
That's a large responsibility, Sheriff, and you all do a fantastic job here in Rockdale County. Citizens oftentimes get a little confused, particularly those people who've been in Rockdale, let's say, less than about 5 years. They see the Rockdale County Sheriff's Office, then they see the Conyers City Police Department, and a lot of folks don't know there's a mayor over in the city of Conyers, right, and the chairman runs the unincorporated area of Rockdale County. How, because your office does so much in the community. I mean, every other week, every other month, you all are giving something away, giving back to, and you've been all over the place throughout this pandemic. Mm-hmm. Tell us about what drives you when it comes to community service and giving back to the people.
So, interesting. The very first thing that we talked about, the Levett legacy, that's just our nature. My grandfather didn't get rich owning his business. He got blessed owning his business. And his blessings was because there were so many families who could not afford to bury their loved ones. My grandfather would just bury them for free, or he would bury them very low cost and cheap, just to provide for that family. And so we are a family that believe in giving back to our community and helping our community to the best that we can. And so, of course, again, as I stated earlier, that's instilled in my spirit, that's instilled in my blood. And so becoming the sheriff of this county, you know, I'm also a citizen and I also have a family. So I believe that we should contribute back to our community. We shouldn't just ride up and down the road and stop cars and make arrests. We should also, you know, be community oriented by giving back and showing our citizens that we serve that we can do more than just affect our arrest or make a traffic stop. So I believe in creating these programs and these different things and giving back and contributing back to our community.
Outstanding, and that's obvious every day from the work and from the service. I really like that part of your explanation, tying it into the history and the heritage and the legacy of the Levett family of community service and giving back. That is certainly displayed in your work. These are tough times, Sheriff, that we are living in. The world is super sensitive. People are living with their emotions right on their sleeves. Law enforcement has taken a brutal beating over the last 36 months plus. We've seen turnover. It's hard to recruit folks to be law enforcement officers. What type of impact of this last 36 months that you've seen at the Rockdale County Sheriff's Office in terms of recruiting, retaining people, and trying to send that positive message about an excellence in law enforcement?
It's been a huge impact because at one sense, what the community don't realize, or citizens who are watching and monitoring their various respected agencies, you're on this side raising sand about what law enforcement should do and why you don't like law enforcement. And then you have the head officials that are in charge of those law enforcement that are actually really doing just what you're talking about, but you don't know that they're doing it. And when you're holding officers and or deputies accountable for their actions, those are things that is not discussed in the community, so you wouldn't know about it. And so those individuals sometimes get a little upset and get a little perturbed because they're dealing with combating the disrespectfulness in the community. At the same time, they're dealing with having to deal with disciplinary issues within the agency. And so that in turn causes them to get upset and leave the agency from time to time, because it's like, we can't, we're battling it out here, and then I'm getting in trouble in here. And so that's some of the issues. And then other issues is, the pay. It's not worth it because we're getting cussed out and fussed out here on the street constantly for this little pay. And then the benefits. And so they will start searching agency to agency, looking for perhaps a smaller agency that pays a whole lot more, where they don't have to deal with a whole lot of calls for service and or issues if within their community.
Right.
So it becomes a huge challenge for us that are out here recruiting.
Sheriff, do you believe that law enforcement officers, people who are serving in law enforcement, are folks who are called to that kind of work, to that duty, or are they trained up to become law enforcement professionals? I know training is involved, but when you talk about the heart and the core of the men and women in uniform, using yourself as an example, you talked about community service, giving back. Do you believe most people who take the oath of office to become a law enforcement officer really have a heart to give back and serve people? What's your thoughts on that, Sheriff?
Well, I do. I do. And when you say trained up, most of them are trained up now. Now, will they utilize that training correct and professionally? Sometimes and sometimes not. Do some of them pick and choose who they should utilize certain professional training on? Absolutely, some do. And that's where we come in, and we have to weed those individuals out if you're not being professional and ethical and in the whole 9 yards.
Sheriff, you must have just read my mind, because I was going to ask, because you being such a fine example of a Rockdale native, you've grown up in law enforcement, grew up in this county. What's your take on those bad apples or not so good folks that give a blemish for the whole law enforcement community? What is Sheriff Eric Levett's stance and position coming across deputies like that in your agency?
So,
what message you want to say to the community that you will or will not tolerate when there's somebody just breaking policy and procedure or not living up to the standards that you set forth?
Actually, if you take a look at if you just ask for certain individuals, perhaps disciplinary file within the sheriff's office, you'll see that we hold our employees accountable. And so to answer that question, I just won't tolerate foolishness. I won't tolerate you disrespecting the citizen. I won't tolerate you using biased tactics against our citizens and so forth and so on. And it's our job as head law enforcement officials to weed those individuals out if we can. Now, we are governed, just because we sit at the head, we're governed by policies, we're governed by laws, and we can't violate that employee's laws or our own policies either. And quite frankly, that employee has
due process.
Due process.
Yes, sir.
And so, and the last thing that I want to do is to violate just because I'm the head and get rid of that employee because I did not like what they'd done, and they turn around and cost the county money because they got me. Even though you may be satisfied with me getting rid of them because of that, but it may not be as harsh enough to have fired them or dismissed them. So I have to be careful, and I have to follow the same laws and the same protocols and the same policies that is set forth, so they can have due process. But adding to your question, it depends on the circumstances and the charges that is alleged on them, and we found as depending on our investigation, outcome of our investigation. If it's bad enough, I want to do all in my power to have their certifications revoked.
Sheriff, I really appreciate that's a pretty hard stand right there, and I appreciate. I'm sure the citizens watching this broadcast appreciate hearing that. I've got another question. I know that people want me to ask you this question. What do you want people to do if they feel slighted, or they have a complaint, or maybe just a concern, or maybe even a suggestion? How should they voice that complaint, concern, or suggestion and want to get through to the sheriff?
So you can always call our office and at 770-278-8000. Ask to speak to either my executive assistant or ask to speak to me, and they'll transfer you to the right individuals.
And give me that number just a little slower one more time, sir.
Yes, sir. 770-278-8000.
Very good.
And just, leave a message and give me a few days or what have you, and I'll give you a call back. You also, can email me at Eric, ERIC, Levett, LEVETT, at Rockdale County, spelled out, GA.gov. And that's Eric.Levett at Rockdale County, GA.gov. And send me an email and tell me what's your concerns, what's your suggestion, your advice, or complaints, or even commend a deputy or either one of my staff members, and we would get that over to them.
Sheriff, sound like you have an open door policy.
It's an open door policy. You just got to be patient with us. As you got to imagine, we are serving over 90-something thousand citizens.
That's right.
Over 300-something employees, and I just cannot call you on a dime. And just be patient with us, and we have an open door policy.
Well, I want to reiterate something you just said, and I want to reiterate this on behalf of the men and women in uniform. Don't just call Sheriff Levett when you got a complaint. Call and give praise.
Right.
When deputies are out there working hard, doing great things, as so many good deeds go unnoticed by our sheriff's office. And somebody may say, well, that's their job. Well, there's a lot of things that's not in the job description that they do on a day-to-day basis. So we're encouraging folks, when you see someone doing something positive or going above and beyond the call of duty, we'd love to hear that, so that the sheriff be made aware, and you can contact those deputies and encourage them to continue doing whatever it was that the citizen. This is such a refreshing conversation. We're going to got just a couple of other questions, then we're going to go over break, and we'll come back and wrap up. One of the things I do want to talk about is the impact on law enforcement, crime, and economic development. Sheriff, we're going to chew on that just for a second. We'll take a break and come back. You're watching Chop It Up with the Chairman. Our featured guest at this episode is our own local sheriff, Sheriff Eric J. Levett of the Rockdale County Sheriff's Office. We'll be right. You're watching Channel 23. We'll be right back at you.
For the last 16 years, Alan Stewart, the owner of the Classic Photo Booth, has served at many parties, weddings, and tons of other events throughout Rockdale County.
Rockdale County, they always invite me to their events.
Stewart said that at first he started off with an old school photo booth until technology changed.
Then I had to go digital because everybody went digital. And I'm just keeping up with the trend, and this is the hottest thing, the 360 photo booth. I don't know what the newest thing will be, but we'll be on it so we can service Rockdale County with it.
The directions of getting great results on this equipment is simple.
You can turn with the machine, and it takes a great video of you all the way around you.
Extra features can also be added to the final captured footage.
We put the border for you on this TV screen over here, and we add music to it as well.
The simple things that Alan loves most about his job.
Oh, fun! It's so awesome!
Is seeing the reactions.
Can I do another one?
of people using the equipment for the first time.
Wait, one more time, with me and my friends, my buddies,
At the end of the day, satisfaction to customers is what matters most.
I'm sure they enjoyed it, but everybody had a great time. You're next, right? Because we're almost done.
If you're interested in one of the Classic Photo Booth at your event, you can call 877-45-BOOTH, or you can go to their website, www.theclassicphotobooth.com. In Rockdale County, Rashawn Hertz, Rockdale 23.
All right, we're back from break. We're watching another episode of Chop It Up with the Chairman, Chairman Oz Nesbitt, and our featured guest is our sheriff, Sheriff Eric Levett. Sheriff, we've had some good information here, learned a lot about you, your legacy, your stance on law enforcement and dealing with the not so good and how you weed out the bad apples. And we really do appreciate that. And we also encourage people to give us good news when there's good news concerning the good work that you and the deputies do throughout Rockdale County. I want to talk a little, I want to shift gears just a little bit. I want to talk about economic development, but the impact of crime and law enforcement and how it impacts economic development here in Rockdale County. Tell me your connection with knowing the importance of pairing those two together.
I think it's very important. You know, some time ago, I think it was last year, I believe it was, I was, you know, again, brainstorming about, you know, being active in the community and what can I do to make art and assist in making our community more inviting. So I thought about reaching out to the real estate association and meeting with the real estate agents as a sheriff, just to talk to them how important it is for them to give the right crime statistics to their potential clients or customers that may be interested in purchasing a home. And I think that's the same stance that you know, if I decide to move in that direction, that I need to do with perhaps the business association, if there's one, on how we can identify potential businesses coming into Rockdale County, or that has made a decision to come in Rockdale County or thinking about it. Because what a lot of these businesses and or real estate agents don't understand, that Rockdale County is, in my opinion, one of the safest counties in Georgia. I'm a huge crime fighter, and I believe in keeping up with our crime and knowing what's going on in our community in terms of crime. My family's in Rockdale County, so naturally I'm going to have a huge investment in the crime in Rockdale County. Are we immune to crime? Absolutely not. Are we going to be able to stop every crime in Rockdale County? Absolutely not. But we're going to do our darndest to put a dent in it as much as we can. And so I think that's important, that the business sector and the real estate sector know what is the crime statistics in Rockdale County, and that I think that, you know, it will help sell their potential customer as a Rockdale resident, and it will also help sell that potential business adventurous person to become to land their business in Rockdale. So
Sheriff, I'm so glad to hear you say that, because from the office of the chairman, economic development is right next to public safety.
Correct.
That perfect segue, because what you say to people about when folks are saying, hey, crime is going up, there's crime is sparked up here and there, and people are saying that without having looked at statistics and knowing the numbers. How do you respond to that, Sheriff Levett?
You know, I don't know how to respond to that, and I don't even know sometimes if it's worth our time responding to it, because people, what I've learned over the years, that most of the time when people start talking, they talk without research. They talk without finding out the facts, and it's because it's such a useful topic to talk about. They just kind of get used to doing the same old. And so, but what I can assure them of, I can take over the last 10 years plus stats and compare it year after year after year and show them where our crime has gone down, and it continues to go down. And I think people get used to seeing or hearing about one or two or three crimes that could potentially happen in a row. It make them think that our crime is high. Oh, I got to get out of Rockdale County because our crime is high. Well, I got some breaking news for you. I guarantee you, wherever you're going to relocate, there's going to be crime there at some point, if it's not already going on. And so no county and no city is immune to crime. And I think that we got to be careful as to what we say without looking at the facts.
I really appreciate hearing that as well. I want to now ask you, you have seemingly, I know we do in the office of the chairman, we have a wonderful relationship with the office of the mayor over the city of Conyers. It looks like you have a wonderful relationship with the city police department here in the city of Conyers. Tell us about how that relationship evolved, because you guys seem to be just on one accord there.
Right. So prior to me taking sheriff, there was what I believe to be, a bad relationship between, not so good, I would say not so good relationship between the police department and the sheriff's office. And I'm not sure if it was more of the top officials or was it more of the lower level officers, but whatever was going on, if it was from the top, it spilled into the lower weeds of both agencies, and it caused us to not get along, so to speak. Mm-hmm. And so I made a promise that I was going to always get along with the police chief to the best that I can, always lend support to the police chief as I expect the same, and we have done just that. Has there been some disagreements? Absolutely. We're going to have some disagreements, but the community did not know it. And we always talked out our disagreements, but we promised to work well together because we have one duty and one responsibility, and that is to serve and protect the citizens of Rockdale and the city of Conyers. And we're going to allow our folks that work under us to work together to do just that. And so whatever could be going on between myself and the police chief, which is not, whatever could be going on between my command staff and the police chief command staff, which it isn't, that will be between us, but we will not allow it to stop us from doing our main function, that is keeping Rockdale County safe and the city of Conyers safe.
Sheriff, it's so good to hear you say that.
We work well.
Yes, sir. When for the last 12 months plus, I've been talking about the 3 E's. Mm-hmm. Emotions, egos, entitlement. You just talked about every one of those 3 E's as you talked about the wonderful relationship between you and the City of Conyers Police Department, how well you all work. You also went on to mention that if there is an issue, you're not going to let that issue get in the way of service and making sure this community is safe. Right. That's what the people in this county want to hear. Now, shifting again, Sheriff, we have over 16,000 young people enrolled in Rockdale County School. Also that's been a big topic over 20 plus years, school safety. Mm-hmm. And even narrowing it down through the last 36 months, and then you add COVID on top of that, school safety is a big, big deal. I've seen you all in action. I've seen whenever there's been any type of incident, I never knew we had just that many sheriff cars and police cars in Rockdale County. Mm-hmm. You have a big heart for making sure that you support the Rockdale County Public School System with security and safety. Tell us about that, Sheriff.
I started out, again, I was a school resource officer, so it's very dear and near to my heart that we provide as much safety as we can to our school system and to our children. But not only that we become, as law enforcement, it's more important, more now than it has ever been, that we show some type of mentorship towards our young adults, especially the way people think about law enforcement, especially young people, and how they feel about law enforcement. So whenever the school system calls us for help or call us to volunteer or even ask us for any type of assistance, we're going to do all in our power to help them out. And it's been going on for quite some time, and we're going to continue that.
It's all about relationships and partnerships.
That's right.
I heard you say that before. That is just wonderful to know. Parents all across Rockdale County always want to know that their children or their child is safe getting on a school bus, standing at a bus stop.
That's correct.
Walking to school or inside of a classroom during the course of the day. We all pray for our children as they head out in the morning to make sure that that they're covered and that they're safe. And I will commend you because I have seen the slightest little alert tone or incident at a school, you actually show up yourself. Yeah. And that's quite impressive. Not just the deputies there, but the sheriff himself has shown up on many, many occasions. Right. Sheriff, a little bird told me a secret and said that you have a really, really soft spot in your heart for senior citizens. Tell me about that. What is it? They tell me that the sheriff just melts. He don't play when it comes to senior citizens. Tell me about your concern about the seniors here in Rockdale County. And is it true that that's a soft spot for you?
It is. It is. It's funny you should say that because for some reason my wife and I agree on that together. She has a soft spot for seniors as well. I have a lot of respect for my mother and father who raised me. But I have a tremendous amount of respect for my grandparents, all of my grandparents, from my mother's side, on my father's side. And I have no idea why. And I guess because, they grandparents. So I guess as we get older, we start seeing that, grandparents spoil the children more than the parents do.
Right.
So maybe it's that reason. But whatever the reason is, I adore the elderly. We at some point got to get old, and we gonna expect for them to for the generation under us to respect us. But most of the time, the ironic thing when I think about elderly in the soft spot, a lot of them went through so much. Other than the military, is the reason why you and I are here and where we are and in the positions that we are in.
They paved the way.
They paved the way more than we can ever pay them.
Yes.
They went through some things worse than you and I go through. Mistreating elderly and abusing them. If you want to get me upset, mess with children and mess with the elderly.
Sheriff, I really appreciate that. I could tell it's a soft spot. You got semi-emotional there. I can tell you was reflecting when you mentioned your grandparents and the respect you have for your parents, but really went there talking about your grandparents and the impression that they had on you. What message, Sheriff Levett, you want to send to the seniors about your dedication to them being safe in Rockdale County?
I want the seniors to know that as long as I'm sheriff for Rockdale County, that, you can always lean on me and my agency for any assistance that you need. And before, you make a decision on something that you may not quite be sure of, please, ma'am, please, sir, call our office and ask. The last thing that we want is for anyone to fraud and make our seniors become a victim of someone's scam. And so that's the worst thing that you can do to elderly is to try to scam them. But know that our office is like an open door policy to you as well. Just know that we're like your grandchildren. And call on us if you have any questions or you need anything from me or the sheriff's office.
I'm so glad to hear that one as well, Sheriff. That leads me to my next topic, community policing. That's almost a cliche or a catchphrase. And a lot of people, I'm not sure, really understand or comprehend what community policing is all about. I've heard you use that phrase and use that term here in Rockdale County. Certainly, I believe you know. Can you explain to us what does community policing really mean?
Yeah, in a nutshell, I kind of touched on it earlier. It's more than effecting arrests and making traffic stops. It's us getting out of our police cars and interacting with our community, our citizens, our youth. It's us having just normal conversations.
Yes.
It's just us sitting down and on the front porch with someone. It's us getting out in the cul-de-sac and playing a little basketball. It's us having community events such as block parties or a meet and greet with our citizens. That is what community policing is all about, us having a dialogue with one another. And so that's what we got to get back to, as they said back in the day, the Mr. Friendly Police Officer. And that's what we're trying to make sure that we change our agency into that friendly agency and those friendly police officers.
I really like hearing that because I think it's important that the citizens first know that you believe, the sheriff himself believes in community policing, and that you want to have that heavy civic engagement. You talked about getting out of the police cars and playing ball at the playground or sitting on somebody's porch, having a conversation or a chat with them. That's what builds rapport and community, and that's the heart of community policing. I think the benefit, your officers, your deputies get to know who lives at that house, who owns that barbershop, who's the pastor over at that church, what's that boy's mama name, because of what? Community policing. Right. Absolutely. Sheriff, this has just been a wealth of knowledge. I got just a few more things. I know you got a big, busy schedule, but if you just bear with me a little. Okay. There's a young person, Sheriff Levett, who's watching this broadcast. They're watching this interview, and they have been impressed. They're saying, just like you said when you were a kid, I want to be a cop. I want to be the sheriff. What words of encouragement, what would you say to that young person out there who wants to get into the world and the career of law enforcement and even one day become the sheriff of Rockdale County?
I first want to say just be mindful of the negative things that you hear about law enforcement and make your own decision, have your own discernment of law enforcement. Everybody that wears a badge is not a bad person. And I always used to tell a lot of young adults, and I'll say to the young people that may be listening to this, if you want change, be the change. At some point, I have to turn this torch over to someone. These deputies that are out here working is going to have to turn their torch over to someone. Someone's got to serve and protect your generation. They're going to have to help you all out when we are retired and sitting back on the beach somewhere. And we invite you to come on board to be that change. Be somebody different than what you're seeing now if you're not liking what you're seeing. But know that every law enforcement agency is looking for good people and good individuals to make a difference in their community. Not necessarily always affecting arrests or make traffic stops, but to make a difference in the community. You don't have to get in law enforcement to be a bad guy or a bad girl. You can get in law enforcement to make a difference in your community and to be a change in your community. So, but however, I have to be biased and say that Rockdale Sheriff's Office is the best sheriff's office in the state of Georgia. So we ask that you come on board with RCSO and be
it's
that team
player. It's a poor frog
player.
that won't praise his own pond, isn't it?
That's right.
Yeah, well, we certainly do appreciate hearing that. And you have a few vacancies with the Sheriff's Office, and there's some opportunities for a career for some of those people.
That's great.
What do you want to speak regarding the vacancies and opportunities that's right here in Rockdale County, Sheriff?
Sure. So, one particular number of vacancies we have, I want to make sure I highlight because oftentimes it doesn't get highlighted and people don't really get too interested in this position, but it's really serving our youth. So, but we have several positions within the agency, which are detention deputies and deputy sheriffs. But one particular few positions that we have are school crossing guards. And although school crossing guards don't pay a whole lot, and we actually have increased the starting salary a little bit so it can hopefully intrigue someone to become a school crossing guard. If you're retired, we'd love to have you on board to go, I think it's a couple hours in the morning and a couple hours in the evening time, and then serve our students and our school buses and so forth and so on. But we have deputy sheriffs, we have detention deputies, and we love to have you to come on board with the Rockdale Sheriff's Office and serve your community. Help us continue to make your community safe. Be a part of a sheriff's office that believes in giving back to the community, that believes in that family-oriented law enforcement agency. So that's what we're...
Sheriff, you gave yourself a full-fledged commercial right there, and I appreciate that because people needed to hear that from you. I like things in threes. I'm always using threes, the three ugly E's: emotions, egos, entitlement. But Sheriff Levett, what are the three top concerns of Sheriff Levett as it relates to the community as a whole, not just limited to law enforcement, but you can include law enforcement, but the community as a whole? What would be your top three things that you say as a community leader, as the Sheriff of Rockdale County, that you're most concerned about in this community?
Crime, of course. Working together, all of us as a team. Law enforcement, county government, community, city government, everybody working together as a team. And then as that third thing, being supportive. Oftentimes rather, and this is the biggest thing, this covers all of us. No one, I don't care who it is. I don't care about your political party. I don't care about your race. I don't care about your gender. That anybody that's sitting in these seats that you and I are sitting in, it's going to, from time to time, make decisions that some folks are not going to like.
Yes, sir.
But more importantly, you don't understand why that decision is made. And regardless if you like it or don't like it, be supportive of the county. Be supportive of your community. You don't have to like me because I made that decision, but don't dislike the people that works under us and the work that they do that carry out those decisions, but don't down your community and your county. So being supportive as well. So I think that's kind of been lost in the weeds somewhere, as well as respect. And so those are the three things that I would say.
Sheriff, you said crime, you said working together, teamwork, and you certainly said support, which covers it all. Supporting one another that's one of the beauties of Rockdale County. You know, you hear me say it all the time, there's only two kind of people, those who live here and those that wish they lived here, because we do work well together with the local city police department, the mayor's office, the school system, your office, and our office. And that's, you know, a lot of places can't say that. And we're able to say that here in Rockdale County.
But we need the community work with us.
We need the community. Yes, say that again.
We need to. We are working together with those entities
Yes,
that you
sir.
just named, and we need the community work with us, and that's where that supportiveness comes from.
Yes, sir. You know, this is Chop It Up with the chairman. We're getting ready to wrap it up here, but I do want to take a moment and give praise, because, Sheriff, I inquired for many, many years about the motorcycles. And even this morning, as I was headed out to my first 7 a.m. meeting, I saw two of the motors out, and you've got some fine people riding those motors. They love what they do. That's where they need to be, and of course, that's where they are. But I'm excited to see, and I'm old school, so to know that through our school zones, through church zones, even our neighborhoods, being able to see those motors who can maneuver and get in a place that a Crown Victoria or a Dodge Charger just can't get to. Tell me about your motor unit and what we can expect down the road with what you're doing. I know you're doing some recruiting and you're trying to make sure you have enough people and personnel to get out on those motors, but I just want to say thank you and commend you for that. But what can we expect with motorcycles in the future here in terms of being crime, another tool in your arsenal, Sheriff Levett?
Okay, so, you know, we have, I think, about 5 motors, and 3 of them are rather old, and we just purchased 1 or 2 newer used motors. We've hired 2 full-time motor units, and we got about 2 to 3 reserve motor units, and we're looking to make a few more full-time motor units, which will give us at least 4 full-time motor units.
Which will give you a motor division, basically a motorcycle division.
That's correct.
Okay.
And so they'll be out, you know, every day, even during the wintertime. You know, there are going to be times where it's going to be too bad for them to be on a motorcycle and they'll be in their cars. But for the most part, they'll be on their motorcycles. Those are some experienced motor units from agencies that they've worked at before. And so we look forward to them getting out here every day working traffic, which is additional to our traffic units that we have that are in cars. But we also, you know, getting ready to launch, you know, our bike patrol out. And, you know, as you know, you may or may not know, we have 2 golf carts. And from time to time, we launch the golf carts in all of the walking trails in Rockdale County, especially trails that seems to be an issue. The only issue that we have is not in terms of crime, but in terms of, you know, people coming from other counties parking, illegal parking, and they get in the water in the lakes somewhere, and we have to go out there and deal with them on the way that they park and so forth. And so we usually launch our golf carts over in those areas, and so we're hoping to increase our visibility utilizing those things and perhaps segways, but we want to put those resources back out there and be a little bit more visible. That goes back to community-oriented policing as well.
Very good. Sheriff, we're at the end here. I've got 3 very easy questions to ask.
Okay.
And I'm asking for the little girl that ran up to me the other day at Publix. I said, guess who I'm going to be interviewing? She says, who? Because she's been watching Chop It Up with the Chairman. I says, the sheriff. She said, ooh, I got a couple of questions for her. I says, what are they? The first question, she says, ask Sheriff Levett, what's his favorite color?
Blue.
What's his favorite food?
Steak.
And what's your favorite song?
Oh gosh, I'm gonna have to say the '90s. Most of the '90s songs.
All right. So I think I heard you say blue is your favorite color, steak is your favorite food, and you are a fan of music from the '90s.
Right.
Folks, you've been watching Chop It Up with Chairman Nesbitt. Our guest has been Rockdale County's top cop, Sheriff Eric J. Levett from the Rockdale County Sheriff's Office. Sheriff, it's been a pleasure to have you here. With Chop It Up with the Chairman. This is what it's all about, bringing folks who are part of this community right here, and we just have a candid conversation, chopping it up one-on-one with Oz Nesbitt, your chairman here in Rockdale County. Thank you for watching. You're watching Channel 23.